What's up, team? Welcome to the Huddle, your weekly playbook where we strategize on everything from playing the game and mastering your fundamentals. We are here to help you distinguish yourself in the marketplace. Sorry, I've fumbled this one.
I
Helping
think
you.
you say that quite often, Paul.
Well, it's a scripted opening, and I try to change it every week. But you know the deal. We're here.
Trying to keep it
We're still
fresh.
here to give the installer a voice and make sure you're equipped with everything you need. That's for sure. So, this week's topic is the ins and outs of moisture control. Um, I know a lot of you guys, especially if you're in commercial, you're going to run across these situations. So I'm really happy to have our guest Seth Pavarnik and Jared Lockwood. And Seth, you are with Ardex, and Jared, you are with Uzine. Is that right? Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Did I say Uzine right, or is it
No.
Utzin.
I don't know the Germans pronounce it
Uzin?
Utzin, but yeah, you can pronounce it however you want to.
With me, as always, is Mr. Daniel and Jose Gonzalez of Preferred Flooring out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. And so, welcome, guys. How's the week going? I'm trying to wake myself up here, too.
There you go.
Good. The weather's phenomenal here. So
The weather
complaints.
outside is weather.
Weather is good, and thanks for having on the show today.
More importantly,
Glad you can make it.
how's business?
No, business is good for us. Summer's the heavy time of the year for us. The June, July, August, lots of school renovation and projects like that.
yeah,
Nice.
we're just out there selling fancy dirt in a bag. Just kind of, you know how it goes.
Fancy dirt
Clean
that
dirt,
flows
no, clean
really
dirt.
well.
Yeah,
As long as
it's
it's not
clean.
recycled from the playgrounds around here.
I sure hope not.
All right, so I thought it'd be interesting to get started by just talking about a few projects. And well, you know what? First, Seth, can you give us a little intro on yourself, a little bit about your background, and then we'll go to you, Jared, and you guys give us a little bit of info about you guys.
Yeah, certainly. So my name is Seth Pavarnik. I'm the director of technical for Ardex. I started with Ardex back in 1991. I was 7 years old. I look pretty good for my early 30s. Now I grew up in the construction industry. My father and grandfather were general contractors, so I was a gopher growing up, meaning go for this, go for that.
Yeah.
And I started with Ardex early 90s, and been in technical for quite some time, and been involved in the industry quite a bit. Different associations out there, and really like to give back to the industry as much as possible. It's done. It's been great for me to be in the industry. I feel like I owe it back, and I like to give back as much as possible.
Well, I know I've seen you at just about every convention I've been to, so
Yeah, I don't know how you guys do it.
I certainly see you out and about trying to improve the industry, and you're on several committees and different things like this, and some boards too, right?
I am.
Awesome.
I am. Yep, heavily involved with FCICA, NAFCT. It's able to be board member with both of those associations, and contribute in other ways as well. Canadian Association, NFCA, ASTM, just help build industry standards. The IICRC help build different inspection standards out there for our industry. So just try to help out as much as I can.
Sweet. Jared, give us a little bit of background on yourself, sir.
Well, I've been in the flooring industry for 25 years now, I guess. So started
Dang.
around 1999, 2000 as a ceramic tile helper, like installing ceramic. So been in the industry a while. I started with Utseen back in 2016 when we came strong into the Michigan market, and just been doing that ever since. So I was with USG for a short while before then, doing some moisture mitigation stuff. So
you both got great backgrounds, guys. This is why we, one of the podcasts we try to bring on a couple of experts. I can vouch, certainly for Seth. I know him a little bit better, but Jared's got a long history in mitigation, like he just said. And so if you have any questions, make sure to, or comments, good experiences with the different self-levelers, and because that's certainly a part of moisture mitigation when you start talking about prepping a full mitigation system for new flooring. Give us your thoughts and we will talk about them. So Mr. Daniel, Mr. Jose.
Well, let me just start out by vouching for Jared right away. He did the first time we met him, this guy came up to one of our hospitals and helped us with a night project. And I was like, oh my God, this guy's making us grind everything. Why? You know what? I know why.
Now you know why.
Now you know.
Hey, I gave you the why too, and not just the do what you do, but the why.
Now you know. And knowing is half the battle. Only people that are probably 40 will know where that came from.
Yeah, G.I. Joe. It was very refreshing to have someone out there with hands-on and actually going through the process instead of just letting us fail on our own. Right? He made sure that wasn't in the stars for us. So we do appreciate that.
We were there till what, 5:30 in the morning, Jose?
Oh my goodness.
We were there forever.
It was a long night.
Yeah. It was a long night.
Let's mention that for a moment. For all the installers that join us, we got a large audience that's typically on here watching, and you guys as tech reps in the industry, you actually want to hear from those guys, don't you?
Yeah,
from the installers.
Yeah, I would say the work. I wish I had $5 every time I had somebody call up and say, "Hey, I just used your product. I think I did something wrong." I could retire. It's like, just call beforehand,
Yeah, I think a lot of we've promoted on here quite a bit about like getting in touch with the tech reps and getting to know the product even a few days beforehand. Hey, what am I going to run into? What are some things to really think about with your product line? In fact, I just did a huge exterior Ardex with some A14, the new stuff, brand new. Like I did it. It was A14 and X90 and X35 drainage mats. I just got through phase one of a big project, and you guys, had Greg out, and I probably talked to him for a week ahead of that project every day. I wanted to know. Now this was brand new, so I hadn't even really thought and gotten the concept through on how to put this stuff down correctly and make sure that our guys are doing it right. But the point is, guys, get a hold of your tech reps ahead of time, and they want to hear from you guys. They're not, shy. Most time when I'm at convention or any of the shows, they actually want to hear from you guys more often. So don't be scared to reach out. All right. So, hey boys, can you tell me about a moisture failure you've had?
Yeah, recently actually. Recently, like within the last couple of years.
Yeah, well, just any time, but yeah, whatever you want to bring up.
Daniel has more information on that one. I mean, I can only speculate and add to what was secondhand through most of it.
Well, it's just I have a project right now. I actually was talking to Jared earlier. You were using his system over here, and the architect just wants so much information, and it's just like can you just provide me with something? He's like, I can get you an email. She's like, I need something by end of day today. He's like, the documents typically take 72 hours. Can I just shoot you an email? And it's like, well, something's better than nothing, right? But it's the MVER, the moisture vapor emission rate, came back a little bit high in a couple areas, and it's just on the trenches where they poured the new concrete. So we're going in with a one-part system since the RH is in check everywhere, and we don't necessarily need to do the two-part system, the epoxy system. Save some dollars and cents all the way around. So switching it over, and this architect is just, I don't know, man.
Well, let's not
Especially,
go down that
especially
rabbit hole of how to deal with architects. I think that deserves its own episode.
No, but it is important to note there are different styles of products out there to address things differently. I mean, a one part component urethane can handle moisture up to a certain point, and then the an F3010 epoxy can handle as moisture as high as you want it. But it's important to educate the contractors that they do have different options. They don't just have to go with an epoxy if the moisture is high. You do have other options. So whether it is a high moisture adhesive or a urethane or whatever other, there are other solutions out there, sheet membranes, that sort of thing. So it just every situation is different. So a lot of it is just letting people know what the options are and they can choose the best one.
Well, let's talk about. I'll tell you a quick one, a specific one. We had a floor, and before I tell you, kind of identifying this balance when you're, we know when we take a moisture test, it's really a snapshot of the floor under those conditions at that time, and so question to both of you guys after I tell my little story will be, what do you recommend when it's like teeter-tottering? It's really kind of at a certain level where you think you can get away with this XYZ adhesive that says it's let's say it's a 95 RH adhesive and you're right at 95. And what would you guys recommend doing there? I know circumstances change. My circumstance was we were below grade at a early learning center. We had the same exact scenario. We opted for a higher moisture adhesive, went with an LVT down there. It did seem to have good drainage and different things on the building. Not that I'm a great expert on the outside of the building or should have to be, but sometimes even those things we have to consider in flooring. But we ended up going with an LVT. We sent all the information to the architect. We, had everything submitted and approved, installed it, and it probably took, we also considered we were in a wetter season when this happened. So we figured this is probably as kind of as high as it would get, it would probably dry out. I don't know the mistake, but it failed. It took about a year and it started failing, and then it failed drastically. It was like something happened. Now, we didn't, by all reports from the owner and the GC, there was no event, no flooding event or a pipe breaking or what have you. But it seems to me, because it looked great for a year, and then kind of started showing some signs, and then man, it just went to hell really quick. So we ended up having to replace that floor. Now we had full, to be honest with you, the GC and the architect all stepped up, and so did the owner. I said, here's all the testing, here's everything, here's the reason we went with all this stuff. It was all approved, so I can't replace it for free. And so I got paid for the replacement, but it was a little touchy for me. Like, it was just one of them touchy situations. Like, well, should I have done something different? So that was one scenario where I really didn't. I still don't know if I, because I don't know if there's an event, and that circumstance kind of throws me off a little bit, meaning that it lasted so long so well and then kind of failed more drastically. But that aside, I almost wish I would have just completely mitigated the floor and done that. Anyway, I think this will give us an opportunity to talk about that, but also let's go through these levels. You got moisture, and I'm going to name them off, and any of them that I miss, I'm going to turn it over to you two, and we can conversate back and forth between all of us. But I know we have, the roll goods, the like used to be called Versus Shield. What's the new name of it? Kavara.
Carrera.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like a rollout membrane stuff. You got one parts. You got high moisture adhesive actually that's in there as well. Some of them go up to 100 RH or say they do. You also, if you can correlate those with, um, a more breathable flooring, I feel more comfortable in those situations. In fact, when we replaced, we put the highest moisture adhesive that EF Flooring had and put kinetics in is what ended up happening down there. And that's performed now for 5 years with no issues whatsoever. But then we have, the one parts and then two parts, and there's different levels in the two parts even, it'll handle different stuff, different levels of vapor emissions. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys on those, with all those deals, all these options. Do you have a standard kind of like playbook for the audience that this is kind of how we see you using or looking at these moisture tests versus with your projects and what to consider there? And then these are the products that, you might consider to be the best solution for those.
Right. One of the things I want to say, and echo what you said, Paul and Jared. There are a variety of different types of materials out there, and you both have mentioned the different types. The key thing to keep in mind here is that any material that has a maximum RH of less than 100% should not be used in an environment that it could be exposed to 100% or condensed liquid in some capacity. And when I say that, there are single component roll-on products that might be at a 95 or 98. We had products under our brand like that. There's adhesives that are high RH adhesives that are lower than 100%, meaning 99. And if you look at a project that, we'll just take a building that's 40 years old, like the project that you were talking about, Paul. You have a building that's multiple years old, 10, 20, 30, 40 years old. You have a concrete slab on ground. The likelihood of having an intact vapor retarder underneath that concrete slab is slim to none, if one was ever used in the first place. And even though you test for moisture today and it's 95% RH today, it doesn't mean that at some point in the future it can't be higher than that. So I suspect in that application that you were referencing, Paul, that you were at moisture tolerances during installation, but it was a slab on ground, probably no vapor retarder that was intact. And at some point in the future, whether it was the rainy season, the heavy snow that's coming off winter and you're melting and you have all this water, you get to the point where you have excessive moisture, to the point where you're exceeding the performance of that material in that application. So you could take that same similar product that maybe have a 99 or a 95 or a 98 maximum, and if it's new concrete that has an intact vapor retarder, or it's new concrete that's on an elevated deck with no other sources of moisture, and you're reading 98 today, that would mean that next month you're going to read 97, and the month after that you'll read 96. because that elevated moisture right now is just going to continue to go down over time, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot
Yeah.
of sense.
Yeah,
The way you said that too was for everyone out there. The way he said it too was, if you think that it's susceptible to more moisture at some point in time, chances are just to go a little bit, one step above and beyond what you were thinking.
Yeah, and like our approach is very similar. Like, it's anytime that there could be a failure of the vapor barrier, or like those older buildings, just treat it like it's an open slab. I mean, you're gonna treat it like the vapor can freely come in and come out, and that just means everything. Like, you have to treat it like it's 100. You just do.
Yep.
So, but in that specific instance you brought up, Paul, like, you also have to look at the limitation of what the floor covering is too. So like you could have an adhesive that goes 95, 98, 99%. If you're putting down a 90% floor covering, you're going to end up with dimensional instability, warping, all sorts of issues with your floor covering long before, and the adhesive is going to keep it stuck, but it's going to look like junk. So
absolutely. And I'll just add to that, Jared. There's two terms that I use when we're talking about all these different remediation systems and high RH adhesives. So when you really look at an adhesive, the adhesive is tolerating that moisture. And if you have a floor covering that is a lower maximum RH, with that adhesive only tolerating the moisture, then that floor covering becomes susceptible to moisture. Whereas a mitigation system, such as an epoxy or the urethane that you mentioned, Jared, those are remediating the moisture. So adhesives, generally speaking, high RH adhesives, I don't want to include everyone out there, every adhesive out there, but a majority of your high RH adhesives just tolerate the moisture, and where mitigation systems actually remediate it.
I like that distinction. I do like that you guys brought that up. The difference between tolerating and it's called mitigation. So moisture mitigation or remediation of that problem, actually blocking that moisture vapor from coming through.
Yeah, and I'd say that most floor coverings, are going to have a lower tolerance than some of these high moisture adhesives that are on the market. And it seems like industry-wide, people have been overselling the high moisture adhesives without a proven track record. So it's one of those things where it's just like, okay, let's slow down a minute here and make sure we walk through all the details of the project and the limitations for everything involved in your system.
Right.
So,
And I think that some of the flooring manufacturers have also started, like, in their spec, instead of giving limits for the actual flooring, they just say for the moisture, it's referred to whatever adhesive you're using. They don't even give you that information outright anymore. So,
well, so much had to happen so quickly on moisture. If you think about it, once we lost solvents and things in our adhesives, and I installed back then, so I know what it's like to have those adhesives and not shoot. We didn't care. I mean, you had you, that is, I think, why so many people, especially building owners, they're like, well, I had VCT down from the 70s and I'm just putting VCT right back down. Why is it any different? And you got to walk them through this whole education process of why our adhesives are not near as durable as they used to be from a moisture standpoint, and what it means to have water soluble adhesive and why we have that and all this. But yeah, it had to progress quickly, and then the mitigation systems, they were so high cost for owners and stuff. So then manufacturers started working on the adhesive side. Of course, those always are progressing to get better, but from a flooring contractor and installer standpoint, it appeared to me that mitigation systems came out pretty quickly and different ways of solving some of the problems. But a coaster product that we used to use a lot of, and kind of an early brand, it's going to cost you $8 a square foot to put that down. And a lot of times it was more than the flooring system. And so then we started getting the high moisture adhesives and such. And like you said, some of them seemed like they were maybe billed or promoted in, I don't know if it wasn't necessarily, I don't think, purposely dishonest. I don't want to say that, but I mean, maybe oversold is the best way. But the problem for us installers, and what the point I'm trying to get to here is, we had to absorb a ton of crap. I mean, manufacturers had to deal with it, but you had to deal with it in your silo of being a manufacturer. And then flooring installers and contractors were getting it from every rep about all these products. You had to absorb so much so quickly. There's no wonder that there's still moisture failures. It seems like most of them can be solved, and there's a product out there to solve them. But that seems to be toning down. People are getting more educated on all the products, and so that seems to be. But there was this bell curve of, like, even though the products were there, wrong products were being used, or what have you, because frankly, it was a lot of information to try to just absorb as a flooring contractor in the early days of figuring all this out.
No, you're right. I mean, you go back, 30 and 40 years. It's not like, specifically, cutback adhesive was designed to be a, moisture tolerant adhesive with VCT, but the reality is it just performed very well. VCT with cutback in high moisture conditions did very well. You had a lot of solvent adhesives way back when, and when the switch was made, to get away from all the nasty chemicals, and you get into a lot of water, all the waterborne adhesives, there were tons of growing pains. Back in the early days, you go back 30 years ago, a lot of growing pains with the waterborne adhesives. But the technologies have come so far with mitigation systems and with the high RH adhesives. And I just go back to there's different products for different fits. Just really understand the project and then the limitations of whatever product you're considering, so that we're using the right product for the right application.
So
we
had a few comments about dew point. Can you guys address dew point?
Yeah, I mean, dew point is when your job conditions allow condensed moisture to occur. I mean, let's I take it we all like beer. You get a nice frosty mug, and you got some cold beer, and you got warm, moist air in the room, and you got condensation happening on the outside of the glass. It's that you're hitting dew point.
So it's important for flooring contractors out there. I think the point that our listeners are driving at here is that you can have your moisture testing, but if you do not
check the ambient conditions as well.
Which is where our partner here on the Huddle, Floor Cloud, comes in to great advantage to everybody, is checking your dew points and your site conditions. Because if your dew points or your ambient conditions are going to cause a condensation factor to happen, even if your RH is correct, it can condensate on top and not affect that RH reading that you had, the week before or what have you. So, Jason's been a guest on here before, and he's Jason Ramsey, and he's an inspector. And one of the things that he's been real well, I say Jason Ramsey, but also Jason Canton over at MAPE brought it up as well, that, dew point is an important factor in all this. Probably very specifically when you start getting into your areas of, high humidity climates. So
Right. And then, Chad talking about builders not wanting to do anything on top of concrete because they say that there's a vapor retarder underneath and they don't want to spend more money when, I mean, all this testing is there for a reason, right? That's why we do all this testing plus the ambient conditions. So that way we know the entire system. You have to look at everything. And that's where we always say that flooring installers essentially need to be scientists sometimes, right?
Yeah.
We need to know a lot about everything. And if you're not, that's when you get these guys that are like, and we say it time and time again, I've been doing it this way for 20 years.
yeah, that's like, as soon as someone tells me that, I'm like, okay, this is not going to be a good conversation.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if there's no
I
climate,
guess,
if
go
there's
ahead.
no climate control in the building, like your dew point's going to vary constantly. So it's like, your site conditions are a very important part of the whole system, right? I mean, it's going to affect your flooring materials need to acclimate, like your acrylic primers won't set up. There's just a laundry list of things that happen when, your conditions aren't controlled. So monitoring those is very key.
Well,
No,
I've ran across this a particular problem with a project that the the school had their a school client of ours had their multi-use facility. It was a separate facility from the school. It was a rural school. They built a gymnasium, but it was multi-use. And we put down a athletic flooring, and it got some bubbles. And then we pull it up, and you can see the visible moisture on the concrete, but we RH tested and it was okay. I was like, what the hell's going on? Oh, well, come to find out they were turning off, and this is a school district thing, and I think they're getting past this, but this is a rural school district. This was just this in the last 12 months. They're turning off their building
HVAC.
control system they left it off all summer.
Yeah.
And then they turn it off on the weekends, even in the winter, because they're just trying to save on these on their bills. And I get it, but that destroys our products
But to add
anymore.
to
It
that too,
completely
to add to
destroys it.
that scenario, there's a school recently where, tons of renovations have happened over the years. Some of the school has HVAC, some of it does not. Some of the HVAC is shared by opening up the fire doors and blowing a fan down the corridor. And, and this renovation had a lot of resilient rubber and some Forbo. And we couldn't explain it to them enough that something was not going to go right for them because of that. Well, we left the doors open all night so that way it could all be the same temperature for you in the morning. Go, okay. Well, thank you.
I mean, frankly, this condensation and dew point problem can cause a problem even if you have a mitigation system down, and you don't have a high moisture adhesive on top of it. Even in that case, you can still have a problem. But if you have if you mitigate the floor and you're like, okay, now I can just use the manufacturer's recommended adhesive for this product, and it's a 85 RH, even though I had 99 everywhere previously, and I had high vapor emissions, I mitigated, I'm good. Well, if they're going to have a dew point issue or a building control issue, it can still cause this condensation problem. So I don't want to go down that as our only topic, but it sure has. It got brought up. I think it was a good thing to get brought up, and so,
like Jason says right here, he's seen problems with integral moisture mitigation products, and I think what he's talking is like admixtures and stuff.
admixtures and topical stuff. Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
me
we
and
have
Jared
bonding.
actually talked about this. Like, this was probably going to be something that was going to get brought up because we were on a project that it was a whole issue with the admixture and them not. I mean, it wasn't even with the it ended up being an issue with the moisture after everything was done, but during this time it was just about why do we have to pay for a blotter layer?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's with the admixtures, it's just like for decades, right? The flooring industry has designed their products to utilize the capillary structure of the concrete for its installation. And when you put a product in that densifies that concrete and tries to cut off that capillary structure, things just don't work the same way. So it's just like you have to carefully think about the process with the admixtures. There's even new ones coming out like nanosilicates, which, you know, we've had some projects where those work just fine and other projects where those have popped up as an issue. And they're not even like a silicate admixture. They're just like
They're
like
a
a
topical.
nanosilica. Yeah.
Yeah, you're the topically applied at placement products that are nanosilicas,
Yeah.
and not a silicate, but a
Not a
silica.
silicate, but yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
they're
they function,
nanosilicas, and they
they're not a
function in much.
reactive, but they do densify the same sort of way and cut off the capillary structures. And it's like,
They can, yeah, they fill the capillary structure, and just to make it clear to everybody, I mean, we need adhesive isn't duct tape. I mean, it's a
yeah,
mechanical bond. Once it dries, you're trying to get a mechanical bond into the pore structure, and so it's important to have that. But then it does cause problems, and
Yeah, but
so
even if the adhesive is, some adhesives are suitable for non-absorbent surfaces. But
mhm.
the thing about using, you know, a densifier, whether it's a silicate or a silica, you know, changes the density of the concrete. You know, the mechanic may think it's regular old concrete as he knows it, uses the same square notch trowel, uses the same 15-minute open time, and the moisture from the waterborne adhesive has nowhere to go. And then there's an issue. It may require a smaller notch trowel. It may require a longer open time to get the moisture out. But you got to check with your manufacturer and their recommendations for the application.
Yeah, again, it's just another doggone softball. Well, fastball to swing at. It's another thing that flooring contractors have to discuss and figure out whether or not. I mean, if it's going to be used at the end of the day, if an admixture was used, we usually find that out later. I mean, I love it when we find out early, where we can either start to plan with all the parties that are going to be involved, but often they know that, you know, the flooring manufacturer's recommendation is no admixture, and they're going to have a fight. So usually it's one of these things where that salesman selling to the concrete company sells it to the GC, and it's a done deal before we ever know it, and then we find out later. Hopefully, in some cases, we have found out after our floor's done, and we're like, we've had the lamination deals, and come to find out it was the admixture. We didn't even know it was there, had no idea. So, of course, your vapor emissions tests come back just fine.
I think
But
the one reason we found out on the project that I was talking about was because we asked for the moisture testing results, and they were like, "Oh, we didn't need to because this admixture's in there." That's what started the conversation with everything.
Yeah.
It
it was,
funny you say
there's
that
barrier
because
one in there. It's fine.
Yeah.
I'm
So do
one of
we
the
have? Well, go ahead. Sorry, Jose.
say I'm one of the bids that I'm working on right now because there's a lot of information that's not in there. I think I included with they must provide a copy of the moisture test. I also included in there that if there were any admixtures added to the concrete, then we need to know 20 days prior to our arrival. Like just added that in there like an hour and a half ago. I just feel uneasy about some of the literature that was in this bid, and I just felt compelled to put that in there for safety.
Your larger projects, you gotta. I feel like we need to do a better job at my flooring company of just that. To be honest with you, it's unfortunate that we got to take all this on. I mean, I remember the business years ago. It was just not, we didn't have to have all these considerations. So, um, we need to make more money in the flooring industry because you got to be scientists and, like you said, chemists and applicators and make sure the right products in the right area. But that's that's always the consideration on these larger projects because they want to see the easy button for that. That led me to the question I was going to ask was, is there a silver bullet with high moisture concrete, a high moisture project?
I don't know. I don't know if I'm totally understanding your question, Paul. Sorry.
Is there
No,
a
there's not.
silver bullet solution if there's high moisture? Like, is one of the mitigation systems that's the solve every time, or should we always consider all of the different options? I know it's a tough question to answer, but like if you have a new person in flooring that is, and I don't mean a new person, but someone starting, we're in this phase. I just read an article about how many flooring companies are possibly up for sale. You're gonna have new ownership coming through, gentlemen, in the next 5 to 10 years because a lot of people are cycling out. A lot of baby boomers are leaving their businesses. So my question is, with these newer people, and some of them are not necessarily in flooring, that are going to be buying these businesses or stepping into these businesses. My question is there a one solution? Is it mitigate the floor if you just don't know the best thing to do is do this, and you shouldn't have any problems?
I mean, I'll say this. I've always taken the approach that I evaluate a given project, with a contractor, look at what the needs are for the contractor, and we make a recommendation, based on the needs. I'll say this also, that I've worked with different hospital organizations where, they will use epoxy mitigation always, whether it's needed or not, because to them, that was an insurance policy. For whatever.
I have a client just like that, Wesley Medical Center, and it's an ArtX product that they're just like, nope, we put mitigation under everything now. They got bit hard enough that's the deal.
Yeah, the tough thing here is I can't say that epoxy, even though there's a tremendous amount of experience in the industry, multiple manufacturers with epoxy for decades, that doesn't necessarily mean epoxy's the one-stop shop and that's the fix-all. I mean, you can get into situations where we have an ASR situation, alkali silica reaction, which is you have excessive moisture, but you have a reactive aggregate in there, and putting a mitigation system is not going to correct issues that will occur in that situation. And you can also sometimes get into these osmotic situations where we have a water source and we have salts from the concrete and we have some sort of semi-permeable membrane at the surface of the concrete, which could be the pore structure, that no matter what you put down, epoxy mitigation system, resilient flooring, terrazzo, you end up with a failure, an osmotic blister, because of the condition that's there. So I don't want to say that there's just a one product fixes everything by any means. I mean, you get into situations with ASR, and that's like the concrete has cancer because you have this reactive aggregate in there. And what do you do with cancer? You cut the cancer out. Nobody wants to hear it, but you got to cut the concrete out and start over.
No,
That's
and
funny.
with those, with the
get...
NASRs, it's like the near surface, like the epoxy moisture mitigation just causes that reaction, right? I mean, you trap the moisture in there, it causes the chemical reaction, and it's like, yeah, you get blistering and you just have to cut it out. There's no plan B for it, right? There's no, it's
Right.
remove only. And the epoxy it's a factor in there, but like removal is the only option. So
Yeah, you make a good point. It's like the epoxy, by remediating the moisture, ends up creating a situation where the ASR can happen. The fix to that situation, if the client's okay with it, is leave it as concrete and let the moisture just breathe right out into the air. If we don't have liquid alkaline water sitting at the surface to react with the aggregate, the reaction doesn't happen. So if the moisture can just evaporate out of the concrete and never have a condensed alkaline liquid situation there, then the ASR, the NSAR doesn't occur.
Okay, so tell us the test. What series of testing? Between the vapor emissions, and RH and pH testing. What's a good indicator that that's present?
Wait, what's present?
Well, how do you know you're going to have that scenario, or
With
is it a post?
ASR?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have an aggregate that is in the concrete that should not be in there.
Mm-hmm.
There are ASTM tests that qualify aggregates. It might be C33. I can't remember offhand here, but there are reactive aggregates out there that should not go into concrete. We, and I'm sure Uzine does the same thing, have to have their aggregates tested and confirm that they're not a reactive aggregate that they're using in their material. But these aggregates slip in on occasion, and if there's no moisture, there's no liquid moisture with high alkaline liquid moisture, then that reaction never occurs. But to try to test to see if there's reactive aggregate in concrete, I mean, it's a hit and miss thing. I mean, you could take a core sample and find a reactive aggregate, and you could go 2 inches over and not find a reactive aggregate. They're not supposed to be there in the first place, but they on occasion slip in.
Yeah, the times that I've seen it, it's spotty across the floor. It's just like some places have some of that aggregate and the rest of the slab is fine. So you could have the slab 95% correct, but have it's just like a cancer problem where you could have 100 different areas in a 10,000 square foot building that all have to get repaired, whereas the rest of the slab is fine. And they could all be concentrated together, or they could be further apart. And it's just incorrect aggregate, impure aggregate that comes through from the quarry and ends up in the mix. So like the testing for it, most of the time it happens retroactively, where we have a problem, we get osmotic blisters, and we pull up the moisture mitigation normally, and underneath there's a white crusty film and reactions that's taken place at the surface. And that's normally how we identify it. It's all retroactively, because doing core samples,
you gotta learn from the problem. Like there's no way to test for it.
Yeah, normally you discover it when you start.
And this is good education for me. I've never had this happen to me, so I'm a bit unfamiliar with it, to be honest with you. So thank you for bringing that up, and I guess I'm really glad I asked the question. Is there a silver bullet? Because I have not had that, so it made me curious if there's some combination of the testing methods that would expose that problem, and it's obviously there's not. You just kind of have the failure and then find the solution. So we kind of started this out and we're running a little short on time, but I wanted to kind of just go the different steps and have you guys give us a chance, starting from a lower level to a higher level moisture reading on both of your guys' product lines. What is your solution for, like, hey, I'm a little concerned. It's it's a 90 RH floor or 92 RH. And just one other thing is these have a 3% variation factor in your RH test. So I mean, like we don't have to consider enough. these things could, and that could be up or down. So, um, uh, what's your low to kind of high? There's no specific project here. I'm just curious to have you guys give you a chance to start from kind of your bottom product up, and what's your strong, your mitigation solution for a 25 MVR or something.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jared.
Yeah, start from the
Okay.
bottom.
So typically how we would approach it was, I mean, we would recommend the F2170 RH testing over, a calcium chloride test, just because that's a more predictive test. So we would prefer that type of reading as opposed to the calcium chloride. So like you would get your results of the testing first. So that would be the number one thing. And then once you have that results, you start asking a question. You say, A, is it an open slab situation? If it's an open slab situation, we need to treat it like it's 100% RH slab. So we would recommend you go up to, an F3010, right? Epoxy moisture mitigation. For us, that would be PE460. That's our kind of our gold standard for moisture mitigation, up to 100% RH, up to 14 pH. So that, for most situations, that's going to be the first question we ask: is it an open slab? And then once, if it's a new slab where we're just waiting on the moisture to go down, then we'll start looking at something like a urethane, where, it can go up to 95% RH, typically with a 2-coat application. So that'd be something like our PE 414. But there are other solutions out there, like sheet membranes can also go up to 100. Those are good for like applications where you also have moisture problems, but you have like oil issues in your slab, or something where you're not going to have heavy rolling loads. You could use something like an RR 185 sheet membrane. But when you start getting into the sheet membrane category of products, you open up a whole another list of concerns, like condensation under it and mold growth, and is ventilated cove base, and there's a whole lot of other details that you start getting into when you're trapping the moisture in a sheet membrane. Basically, you get a cavity underneath it, right? So like typically we're not leaning hard on like a sheet membrane application as a fix for things. We tend to like default back to like the epoxy. PE 460 would be kind of the final go-to, because we know it works in most situations.
Awesome. Seth?
Yeah, from our standpoint, we have the brand Henry adhesives, and we certainly have high RH adhesives under the Henry brand. 647, 695, they're acrylic types. But we qualify the installation of those adhesives. So being that they have, a 99% RH, that means if they're ever in a situation where it gets to 100, then, the performance of the adhesive is, off the table at that point. So the application, or I should say the project itself has to be qualified, in that if we're at 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, it has to be a condition where we can't get to 100% or condensed liquid. So when I say that, we're talking about like new construction, where we have concrete that's on a pan above grade, or maybe it's an intact vapor barrier underneath. We know that today we have a high RH of 96, 97, 98, 99, but we know that next month it's going to be lower, and the month after that it's going to be lower, and it's forever going to be in a going down situation. If that slab was an existing 10-year-old, 20, 30-year-old slab that's on ground, and we have elevated RH readings, then we know that is not mixed water that is causing that high RH. The concrete is too old at that point for it to be mixed water, so it has to be another source, and it's probably from the ground, because there's no vapor retarder, because the slab is so old. So I would never use an adhesive in that situation, because even though the readings today might be okay, at some point in the future, we could get up to condensed liquid underneath there, and then, the adhesive isn't going to perform anymore. So in that situation, we want to go with a remediation material. And we have two remediation materials. We have a 2-component epoxy that meets the ASTM F3010. It's called MC Rapid. Permeability of below 0.1 perms when tested in accordance with ASTM E96. So that's one option. And then our other option is a waterborne material 2-coat system called VB100 that also has a permeability of below 0.1 perms when tested in accordance with E96. So, both of those materials could be used in a situation where we could be at 100% RH. So if we have no vapor retarder underneath the concrete slab and the building's 20 years old, I'm not going to use an adhesive for that. We're going to use a mitigation system like VB100 or MC Rapid.
Wow. I gotta say that some of that's eye-opening, even to a veteran here. That some of those terms that you guys used, where it's if there's the possibility for it to go to 100% RH, you should still probably go to a mitigation system and not a tolerance system. Yeah, that's good info. All right, man. Well, that hour flew pretty doggone quick. I want to thank you guys for joining us today and sharing your knowledge with the audience. And thank you to our audience for all the participation. That was awesome. And we really appreciate everybody coming and participating here on the Huddle. If you don't catch us live, get on YouTube, check us out there, check us out on any of the podcasting sites. If you catch us on Facebook or Instagram or Spotify or whatever, make sure to like it, subscribe, give us a thumbs up. I guess you can give us a thumbs down if you want. And but any interaction, give us some comments on your thoughts. I want to tell you that was really educational. I think I sat here at the end of that, and we have a training program or a platform at our flooring company, and this is going into our I'm putting this video in our mitigation. We have a site condition folder in our training platform, and this is going in there in the mitigation because I learned some stuff. I know my PMs who maybe came from different industries in construction are going to learn a lot off this. So thank you guys for your knowledge.
Yeah, I know you were kind of looking for that one product fixes all, right? But I think that's what this last project I did, because I had to do an alternate for moisture mitigation, and I just went with, all right, we're going with the top dog. And then after all the testing came back, I'm like, hey, there's an option to save some money here.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys. Hey, thank you, Jose and Daniel. Again, thank you every single week for being the rock solid gentlemen you guys are. Appreciate that. And to our audience, we're going to sign out now. Thank you. Catch us on next Tuesday, same time, 3 p.m. Central. And we'll have another great episode for you guys. So thank you guys. We love you. And catch us on next week's episode.
All right. Thanks everyone.